But security features isn't all that matters. We care about what our actual risk is in the real world. So in order to determine that, we also need to consider the history of security bugs and vulnerabilities. So how weak has this operating system actually been? And you might ask yourself, so which one of these operating systems, when we consider Windows, OS X, and the various Linux, perhaps the Linux kernel, what has been the most vulnerable over history? Well, we can actually have a look. And here we are on www.cvedetails.com, and you can see over the complete history, you can see that the Linux kernel has actually had more vulnerabilities. We can ignore these applications, and then after that we've got Mac OS X. So that might be surprising for some people. They would have perhaps expected a Microsoft product to be there. And then we have XP here. But this is over history. We care about now what's going to happen in the future. So if we look into 2015, and interestingly, we have the Apple operating systems at the top, Mac OS X, and then a little bit further down we have all of the Windows platforms, and then we have here the Ubuntu Linux, and going further down we have other Linux platforms. But it's not just the number of vulnerabilities, it's also the severity of the vulnerabilities and whether or not there's an increase in vulnerabilities being discovered. So if we look at Mac OS X, we can see here there's maybe a trend going up to finding more. But when we look at severity here, execute code, these are the bad ones, red, this orange one. So it's fairly severe and potentially increasing in trend for Mac OS X. And then Windows is separated into lots of different operating systems, but Windows 7 has a 50% share still. And we can see here this is all over the place in terms of trending, and still is, you know, reasonable severity here, denial of service here. So again, there is significant number of serious bugs coming out. And then if we look at Linux kernel here, perhaps we can say that's a downward trend more recently, and much smaller number of more severe types of vulnerabilities. But there are many Linux and Unix type operating systems, and we bucketed them all into one here. As far as the Linux kernel is concerned, there is a smaller number of the more serious vulnerabilities. We should also consider the speed and time with which these vulnerabilities get fixed, and you could say Apple and Microsoft do a reasonable or okay job of turning them around. But if you have a more obscure Unix stroke Linux type operating system, you may find that the release of fixes is slower because simply you don't have a large multi-billion-dollar corporation behind them to churn out all of the fixes.